All right. Since we are all here, I will open up the October 20th meeting of the Hamilton Planning Board. It's 7:02. I will quick run through the agenda and then do a roll call attendance. Tonight we have a request to modify a site plan review permit by Tragorth and Companies LLC for 59 and 63 Willow Street. We will then be discussing potential bylaw language for a flexible residential bylaw, and then other board business and minutes. So I will take roll call attendance for who is here. When I call your name, just say that you're here. Marnie Crouch.
Marnie Crouch, present.
Rick.
Mitchell, here. Present.
Bill Wheaton.
Bill Wheaton, present.
Corey.
Corey Beaulieu, present.
Richard.
Richard Boroff, present.
Dan.
Dan Ham, present.
Right. And Patrick here is our Director of Planning and Inspections. Also on the call, Dave Tragorth from Tragorth Companies. And Aaron, are you from DMS?
DMS.
Great. And Marcy's on taking minutes. Hi, Marcy. All right. So given that Rick and I are both on the Hamilton Development Corp., who was proposing the Willow Street project, we will both be recusing ourselves from the discussion tonight. So I'm going to have Dan run this portion of the meeting, and then we'll jump back into the bylaw discussion once this is done. So Dan, if you'd like to take over, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Brian. I have to read the whole notice, Patrick, or you guys?
Probably should.
Okay. Request a modified site plan review permit. Tragorth Companies LLC received the site plan review permit from the Hamilton Planning Board on December 17th, 2019 to develop the Hamilton Development Corporation's property at 59 to 63 Willow Street, which is in the B Business Zoning District located upon Assessor's Map 61-000, lots 20 and 21. The applicant will present minor design changes to the board, who will review and potentially vote upon the requests. No changes to project density, height, massing, or footprint are being proposed. Okay, Mr. Tagworth, are you ready to present?
I am. Do you mind if I can share my screen? It says I'm disabled from doing that.
Patrick, you on that?
Let's see.
I'm always
I've just given the command to
there you go. Thank you.
Allow you.
Got
So
it.
David, before you sign off, could we make sure that you transfer back over to Patrick, because we've had meetings disappear.
And yeah, I will try not to cut you off. So thank you. It's good to be back with you guys again tonight. Aaron and I are been working hard as we've been advancing the design and coordination of Willow Street, and it's exciting to dig into the details, especially because this will be another one of our Passivhaus projects. Pretty much everything that we're designing right now is Passivhaus, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the reason that I bring it up is that it's driving a little bit about how we design this building, and how we see it going forward. I will say that what we're really hoping to get tonight is an approval on the floor plan changes and the elevation changes. And I would be more than happy to come back at a later date to talk about colors and other things if the board would like to entertain such things, and some of the materiality that you see. So I think, as I said to Rick in the Hamilton Development Corp, back when we put this on, we keep a pretty open communication line with the town throughout these processes as we go, and really appreciate your input and the working relationship that we'll hopefully continue to have. So really these changes have been brought about by a couple things. Number one is sort of the fundamental change related to just incorporating a little bit more of affordable housing. The 50-50 that we talked about, there's no change there, 50% affordable. But that does have a little bit of a design ramification overall. The passive house has a little bit. And then probably the biggest thing is just really coordination. And I think any architect will tell you that, you start out with a rendering and an idea, and as you dig into the details and get the mechanicals and the structural and everything else starting to pull together, things start to need to be tweaked in and out and this and that. So we've been really working. We have the full MEP, we've been full on into design. For those of you who are architects, I think some of you are, we're doing this in Revit. And we have our contractor on board as well that's sitting in our design meetings. So this is really a collaborative design build process, which you really need for Passive House. For those of you who may not know about Passive House, I just want to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to all of 2 slides that you guys didn't get in advance. Your normal historic leaky house, that probably there are many in Hamilton, many in my community, in terms of the energy use and heat gain and losses, you see on this graph. Huge heat gains and huge heat losses. So how do you lose heat? You lose it through the walls and the roof and the floor and the windows, all these losses. And how do you gain it? You gain it mostly by turning on your thermostat and your furnace and, and then a little bit by people and maybe some solar. A modern house built to modern codes, you've got here, and then passive house here. And you can see that the overall idea is that these are really ultra low energy buildings, not using a lot of fossil fuels. If you can get to zero, that's what net zero is. And really sort of forward thinking in from the perspective of energy use. This is a big thing with regard to where DHCD is pushing us, Department of Housing and Community Development, and in the development of housing. We're totally on board with it, because it speaks to global warming and carbon neutrality and all these things that I think some of you may be familiar with. And it also has to do with just how long buildings last, right? When you build a building, it takes a tremendous amount of energy. And so the longer they last, the better the situation for the environment. So really everything that we're designing is sort of pointing in this direction. And the practicality of what that means is really optimized solar orientation. Now we're not moving the building around. To be honest, it's positioned in a way that's not terribly ideal for Passive House, but it's fine. Used to those kinds of limitations. The other thing that you really focus on is high insulation and making sure that there's a continuous barrier, airtight construction, and then balanced ventilation. So you don't have these leaky houses and just, turning on the thermostat and it goes right out the wall. Like it does on my 1790s house that needed a renovation and just completed. And so what do the windows look like? And I think this is getting into a little bit of sort of as well the design standards. These are going to be triple pane windows because that's where you lose a lot of that heat loss, or you have a lot of that heat loss. And what does that look like in terms of in a sort of clapboard or a shingle cedar shake setting? This is one of the amber line is the line of windows that we're likely going to use, and this is sort of what it looks like. It's from the perspective of being and using the window, works like any other sort of casement windows. They actually tilt in, and then they turn out, or turn in as well. And so really high quality construction, and a serious attention to detail in terms of during the construction process. And that's really why we have a Passivhaus consultant, passive to positive. We've got a builder on board, and I think Aaron can tell you we're digging down into the details.
Would you entertain questions now, or do you want them?
Sure. Let me stop here before because the next
the original plans,
Mhm.
the windows with stickies on them, right? So it was actually 6/1.
Yep.
And most houses in downtown have there's some 4/1s and
Mhm.
there's some 6/6. Is it appreciably difficult to put stickies on these?
So what they'll do is it just gives you a little bit more heat loss. I can, and they'll go between the glass. They won't go
No,
on.
I know. Having built a new house, I know how they work.
Yeah. We can certainly look into it with the manufacturer and see what they can do and whether it creates any problems. If it's important to the board, we'll absolutely look into it. Our passive house consultant and the window manufacturer prefer just the straight glass. You don't have any sort of potential for heat loss, but again, it's all about little compromises along the way. You give a little here, take a little there.
Now I realize that it may be more difficult in 2-pane glass. It's a piece of cake. Lots of people buy it.
Right.
Okay? But in triple windows, it might be a little tricky. That's why I'm just asking. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be happy to get back to you on it. I appreciate, I have a double hung window, 6/6, and I appreciate that that's sort of the more traditional.
I mean, they can still work as casements. This is all just.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah.
Here. Okay.
I would be against that. I don't have any interest in seeing that kind of window. Don't find it interesting at all. I like just seeing the plain window with I call them cell bars. Idea what I think of them.
Well, why don't I follow up on it? I'm happy to follow up on it.
Yeah.
To the degree that there's a continuing
I don't
debate.
see the need for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Besides which, you can buy, I've seen plastic ones that you can put on the inside and they just snap in and out of place and they look on the outside like they're there, but they aren't there.
Yeah. So this is what was, I apologize, it came later than I had hoped. But hopefully this side by side cut to the chase for you a little bit. And just to talk about some of the changes that you see, and I'll walk through these, and feel free to stop me at any time. And if I'm going to answer the question in the next slide, I'll tell you. So on the left, you see the rendering that was approved, or the floor plan that was approved. And on the right, you see our Revit model. So this is like real 3D modeling. Whereas before they were more conceptual sketches, which is totally normal given where they were at that stage. Couple of changes, really no change in the net square footage of the commercial space. I don't know that this was ever really 2,400 square feet when we sort of reached it over. We need a little larger trash room to account for potential commercial use as well. We thought that the fitness and wellness room we could fit. We might sort of bend this around a little bit. And ultimately what we're going to have here, even though these are two separate colors, one that's sort of showing an egress path, I hope to have an open sort of area for what they've called the commons. This will be a double-sided elevator. It's not showing very well right now, but this will be a double-sided elevator. So if you're coming in this door, you'll have a very generous, I mean, it's huge. Commons area opens up to an elevator, package room. And then if you're coming off the parking, you can also come in the elevator just from this side without walking around the stair. Really no other changes. You could see the major dimensions have remained the same. There's a little bit of adjustment, I think by an inch here or there. But overall, really, really largely the same. When you get up to the second and third floors, you do see some switching and swapping of units. And so, this wing of the building was a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom. It's still that, but they're flip-flopped. You still have the stair at the end. And we did eliminate these little bump outs right here. So I think that these bump outs actually only went to the second floor. It was a little hard to tell. This is something that's being driven largely by Passivhaus to have these bump outs, which are exposed to the weather on 3 sides, just creates a real difficulty. And we certainly think we know we can lay that unit out nicely without that. It's got the nice balcony here. Both have the nice balconies. So eliminating that bump out seemed like a really good pickup. We have, you'll see the Juliet balconies and some of the windows are drawn in. And really that's the big pieces there. There is one discrepancy here between the 55 feet here and the 56 feet, 8 inches here. And it's a little bit hard to tell because when you take that 55 feet and put it on the ground floor, I don't know if this 55 feet was totally correct because it's accounting for that bump out, which we're still keeping. So anyways, as we sort of really drive this model, there's a couple of small discrepancies between the original. And that's really why we're doing this. Ultimately, my lender has to say, listen, these are the plans. These are what you're building. How do they match up? And so that's the second and third floor, and they stack perfectly. So next floor, or I'm sorry, elevations. So this has got interesting a little bit. As we really drew out the gables, this one is a little bit longer in reality. These kind of feel the same way, to be honest, but I don't know that was ever really happening, for lack of a better, it was very conceptual, which is totally normal. But again, we've got the balconies, we've got the balcony here, the balconies here. I do think that this balcony probably stopped on the second floor and didn't go up to the third. We are extending that up to the third. I think it just makes sense. It kind of matches the rest of the building. Other than that, I think mostly the same, on this elevation. Other pieces here that you start to see left to right. So this was interesting, and this threw us for a little bit of a loop, is how you see this low roof. But if you really dig into the details, that wasn't quite true. This roof does come across. If you look at all the other floor plans and changes, again, conceptual, totally normal. But as we built it into the 3D rendering or the 3D model, it really started to show that this is how it looks, and how it's always looked in reality. And then you move over, you've got these balconies, you've got the Juliet balconies. This is also something I just want to draw your attention to. There's 2 windows here. Those windows are windows into the carport. So I propose we take them out and put some nice maybe vine growing up this little facade right here. Windows in to see cars didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And I think we can have a lot of nice landscaping in this area. Moving around to the south elevation, this balcony never really existed. If you look at the floor plans and other elevations, this really wasn't here. And so this is largely the same elevation here. Again, we are going to be tweaking these window placements, lining them up, tying them together as we go. They will adjust a little bit, but I think you get the general scheme as we've built this in. This also shows the low roof, which wasn't there. We've got the balconies. This had the little bump out here. This is the east elevation. And really no big changes here. You've got these nice gables that draw down and just cut across the building and the commercial on the ground floor. The rendering, again, I think you can see sort of how things are working. No real changes to the, well, I will say no changes to the site plan. This is also, I think, an important one in the sense of what you're going to see when you pull up in through the driveway. And we have to work out some of the detailing, to be honest, on this a little bit. But general gives you a good general sense. I wanted to, some of the things I really wanted to make sure that you guys that were tied out, to be honest, were this low roof here and windows and some of the bump outs in the balconies. I just wanted to be upfront and clear about how we're handling some of that stuff. And really, that's it. That's the site plan is going to remain the same. A lot of the dimensional features worked out in terms of where things are. And one of our next steps is to go sit with our neighbors to talk through the landscaping plan and just to make sure they understand it, what they'll be looking at from their perspective. We had some really good conversations. I think I might have mentioned it at the last meeting with each of the neighbors, many of the neighbors. I don't know that we hit all of them, just about sort of their perspective and their concerns and construction and all those types of things. And it was great to meet them. And it's our intention to get back out there and actually stand 6 feet apart and stare at a landscape plan and just talk through some of the details, probably hopefully early November. So happy to take questions. Aaron's here as well. And I've got one follow-up about the windows.
A couple of comments for you, Dave.
Yep.
On the very first plan, on the floor plans, just a little bit of help. On the left, you may want to label those the approved, and on the right, you may want to denote those as the proposed, just so everybody knows.
Yep.
And
Good
can
point.
follow that.
Yep.
More global questions, and I'm looking at, having the board make a determination whether or not this is a minor amendment. And to that effect, are you creating more units?
No.
So the answer is no. Are you creating more height?
No.
Okay. Are you creating more parking?
No.
Are you creating more square footage?
No.
Okay. So with those parameters in mind, when it's appropriate, I would suggest that the board vote that this would be a minor amendment. As another follow-up question, it might be useful for you to give us an idea where you're at with the state in terms of your grant, if you have a recent report on that.
I can say that we're very confident that things are going to be moving along at our hoped for pace.
That's great. Great, good to know. So the schedule would remain the same. I know that's going to be something that the neighbors will certainly be interested in as well.
Yeah, so we're basically full speed ahead. What we've communicated with the neighbors and will is basically that we think if everything goes according to plan, which so far, knock on wood, it seems to be moving in that direction, that we would love to be out, in the spring building. And so we have a lot of things can happen between now and then, but that's what we're shooting for.
Okay, thank you. My last question, what efforts did you make, and this is not one of those gotcha moments or asks, but what efforts did you make to incorporate local architecture within the design of this so it would have a better sense of fitting into Hamilton?
So I think what I assumed was that what was approved was consistent, or what you would consider fitting within local architecture. And so our mission that I've given to the architects is to match everything as closely as possible to the renderings, the look, and the feel of what was approved. And so part of that has been a conversation between us and the architects when they say, and the passive house consultant, and they say, Dave, this is a bad idea from an energy perspective, or this is a harder thing to do from a window perspective, and let's have a conversation about it. With some of the conceptual renderings, like this just doesn't make sense when you really dig into it. And so we have tried to keep as close to the approved renderings as possible. There are decisions that we have made that could have picked up a little bit more energy performance, could have made things a little easier from a different perspectives that we have not done because we want to keep it as it appears. And so it's a kind of funny answer, but I think it's related to the fact that this was permitted. And we want, my house has cedar shakes. It has a gable roof. It has all of these things. And I like it. And that's, we liked the design. I'm just moving back.
Also, Dave, just to
Yeah, go ahead.
piggyback on that, I just want to say that the details that the rake trim and the eave trim are based on are very traditional Asher Benjamin style design, using, Intex molding, crown molding, very traditional frieze boards and things like that. So we definitely kept with a very traditional trim work and other things, little accents that would add to making it more of a local architecture.
And I think we have some architects on the board and others. We're happy to take your comments. I mean, I am absolutely this is not a finished product. And B, I think more minds looking at this, the better. Can we do everything? No, but I love getting the feedback. So
One of the things that I think is really helpful in a building is to help to make the entryways and the main doors more prominent. And I think that might be an area you may want to focus a little bit on that might be useful.
yeah, very much agree. I mean, so basically the main entry door is right here. And I think we do want to we want to figure out how to tell people, hey, the entry is right here, right? So you know where to go. There's a lot of glass and a lot of doors. I think we have to figure out the same challenge for the commercial space.
Sure.
So it's a good
Okay.
point.
Well, that's all I have, folks.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, this is Dan Ham. The big thing that I see when I'm looking at this elevation in particular, and then also in the 3D, is that the lines aren't really broken up at all on the second and third floor, and it kind of reminds me of a hotel. And I don't think we want to go that direction in that area of the town, or any area of our town.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I think that was one of the reasons why they had the bump out windows on the left-hand side of this elevation in the original design. To kind of
it's a little too long.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's really evident when you look at the 3D.
Well, and it also, I mean, I wish I was hoping that this roof line was right. Because it also makes that roof line shorter. You know what I mean? So the combination, I think you're right. I mean, the combination of sort of this material change, although it's not it's a material change. And then it's stopping short and this makes it shorter than down here where it feels longer. So let us study that.
It might be that some of Dan's concerns, even though the facade is completely flat, would be, I like your term, materials change. So if you keep the geometry exactly the same, but you introduce material changes under the windows or, around the doors, it might give it a little more varied look and meet the issues that Dan's talking about.
The other thing that might be possible is to do subtle color changes. And the other suggestion I might make is to put some type of a gable over the entryway. That has the benefit of enabling people to get out of the rain before they actually enter the building.
I think there is in the original, in the upper one, isn't there a little roof there?
It's still there. It's not shown as clearly here. But yeah, it's basically, there's a little inset in this notch.
But if that were to mimic the gables of the roof, that might add some interest right at that juncture.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have the space to do that, but it's a suggestion.
I feel like a gable would be hard there. It's a shed roof shown. A gable, I mean, and then for drainage as well, it'd be a whole different issue. But yeah, what's shown there is a shed roof.
Yeah, it's sort of coming out, coming towards you out of the page. I think we can definitely work on this left side. I think we can work on the entryway as we further develop it, all these things. And I also think ultimately as well, once you stick landscaping in front of this, I mean, you're never going to see this image when you're standing in reality. I I think we have to keep that in mind as well.
Dave, the lower drawing is the back side of the building. Is that correct?
No, this is the front side. This
Front
is
side?
the driveway side.
Maybe
When-
go back to
when-
the rendering, Dave.
Yeah, let me so you've got, so this, and I think this is largely how most people are going to see the building, to be honest.
So it's going to be end on to the street.
Yeah, I mean, so you're either going to be driving in or you're going to be walking, right? And the entry point's all the way over here. The commercial space is obviously right here. But that gives you just a little bit of a, and this is sort of like if you're standing in the neighbor's house, looking at the building, this is what you'd see. So I think the two primary facades in my mind are this one, which is facing the parking to in the driveway. You're coming in from here, driving down in front of the building and around. To be honest, this one, because you're going to be turning around, and coming into park, right? But the back side of the building is this.
Okay.
Very few people are going to see this elevation.
Right, but I think the other two are critical because you'll see the one completely from the Black Cow parking lot and the bank
Yeah.
and between.
Yeah.
And then you also see the other elevation, the west elevation through the trees from the.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Those are the two sort of primary.
I think if you break it up in materials, it should be.
Yeah, let us study this. You've got it broken up on the right side by the gables, and let us study this a little bit more.
Right.
Totally.
Okay, and then do check out the windows. I mean, Richard has his view, but it's certainly true that the more traditional windows in New England all are button bars. So some, I'm not pushing any particular scheme, but just any 2/2, whatever.
Yeah.
Just see what's possible.
Yeah, we will absolutely talk to the manufacturer.
I agree with Bill on that as well. I think that if you have this traditional design, then clearly you would have some type of window that had mullions of some sort, whether they're plastic inserts or integral to the windows themselves. I think that would be consistent with a traditional New England design.
Okay.
Dave, Rick Mitchell, I know I'm not supposed to be talking, but this is just a question. On the west elevation in your modification, those two end, and I don't know what you call them, where they bump out. They don't show well on that drawing, so it really does look like one long, uninterrupted facade.
These on the
No.
left side?
Right side, where you've got the gable roofs.
Yeah.
Those are bumped out, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it doesn't show on this drawing. So on this drawing, it looks like it's one continuous facade.
Yeah, there's
There you see it.
Yep.
On the west elevation, you don't. And that's why I think Dan and other people look at it and it looks like one slab.
I think it looks like one slab in this view too, also, Rick.
Yeah, I see what Dan is saying. I think you're both right in the sense that it definitely breaks it up as far as these are coming way out and you've got these indentations here where this entry is. I think we need to figure out this corner a little better. And we're totally up for that.
Okay, great.
So you guys have some homework and we have to decide tonight on if it's a minor or major.
I think what would be helpful for me is if you guys could approve this as a minor. Obviously, it's your choice, but this is what would be helpful for moving everything along. Approve it as a minor mod. Approve these plans with maybe just 2 conditions to come back and talk about the windows and to talk about that corner. And that would be fantastic.
Can I ask you
Keep us
one
moving.
more question?
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
Where is Willow Street in relation to like the drawing that you've got up right now?
It's you would be standing on Willow Street.
Okay. So that's the front of the building, correct or not?
That's the front of the building, although there's a lot of depth to this image.
Right.
So this is the closest to you. This is the next closest. And then these 2 wings behind are furthest away.
Okay.
But it's behind a barber shop and a toy store as well.
Right.
That's true too. Yeah, I mean the Max is right here, basically.
Can I make one quick?
Sorry, I was looking away. Where is Max?
So this is the elevation that right here.
Okay.
That's that gable, that's the other gable. And Max is right to your left on this elevation, on this view. Yep.
So all of those buildings are going to be gone.
No, Max is staying.
Oh, Max is staying.
It's just a single family home there currently.
Yeah, this is in place of the single family home.
Okay.
So Max will continue to be what it is. No change. There was another
Okay.
question, I think.
Can I make one quick comment?
Yeah.
In the same boat as Rick, but not that this will do a lot because you've already broken it up with the balcony on the west elevation. Those 2 balconies. Can you go back to that elevation real quick?
Yep.
Yeah, so the kind of in the middle of there, the balconies that stick out there. Yeah, those. What if you put a roof on top of the 3rd floor one? A gable, that help protect that, and the one below, and might break that up a little bit. I mean, it's got a little depth already with that, but having that extra roof might help. Overall break that mass up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll study that.
Patrick, might I suggest that the board approve or say that the floor plans, the amendments to the floor plans are truly minor? Nobody's had any question about that. And that the questions that people are raising all are about, small exterior changes, and we just hold off on that for a week or 2 and see what Dave can come up with. Is that
Yeah,
part
I
of the
think
meat to
that's
go on?
perfectly acceptable.
That the board finds the revised floor plans you've submitted are fine. Nobody seems to have any questions about them. And then we
Majority of the talk
just
is
sort of
coming on the
hold
bump out.
off on the exterior.
So I'm fine with that as well. But to be clear, the floor plan changing created the bump out going away, created the facade problem.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that would be helpful is to tie those 2 together, and why I'm sort of being specific about what you would like to study further. And it'll also just sort of help us keep everything moving. So if it could be that approval, but for window grills, and but for the materiality of the west elevation that you want to talk about more, then that would be ideal in my mind because it really is tied to the floor plans. And I think I'm also totally game for coming back to you all at a later point and talking about color, materials, more specifically, like what color is this? What are these, as we start to really color this in. But I think what we want to make sure is that we have a building shell and a floor plan that we can really move forward with.
Right.
I have a comment that came to me about needing to vary the ridge line some as well. Is that something that is possible?
So this is interesting. Because there's actually a pretty large portion of this roof that's a flat roof. Because as you build up all the gables and basically just the way the geometry works is there's a section of a flat roof. And I think if we start to change the top elevation or change the elevation of the gables, what's going to start to change is the roof pitches. And I think, Aaron, you might be able to say this a bit better than I. And I think it's going to really dramatically change the look of the building quite a bit.
It would make the building look higher, wouldn't it?
Well, if the pitch increases, yeah, it would definitely increase the height, which I know is a number one concern of our neighbors, which I don't want to do. So I think we're talking about making the pitch flatter, which I don't think will be that visually appealing. It'll be moving further away from sort of a typical gable.
Yeah, and I think that's one point where the views of the building, you won't notice the roof line as much.
Yeah.
So what's the flavor of the board? And can we get a motion from anyone? I mean, I think it's definitely a minor change, and I commend them for keeping the intent and increasing their
So I would make a motion that the board approve the overall modified floor plans, footprint, floor plans, unit configuration, scale. And we just hold off on the exterior for a further review of modifications, minor modifications.
I think it could be contingent on it. I mean, it just depends on I think it should be contingent on it. I mean, I think their intent is pretty clean and fitting with character, and I think we're just asking them to do really a materials change versus any real structural or physical change. Just as long as Patrick's willing to bring it back in front of us versus him not putting all the pressure on him to approve any of those material or physical changes. But there is a motion. Is there a second right now on
I'm
that?
happy to amend that motion. Patrick, you want to chime in here about, you've listened to us, about how we ought to phrase this?
Sure. I think you'd want to make the motion that the board accepts that the floor plan as shown on the electronic plans transmitted to the board on October the 19th are acceptable to the board as submitted.
Yes, and we just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
So there's no negativity anywhere. Yes, I would make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have to do a roll call. Sorry, screen. Roll call vote, right, Patrick?
Yes.
Is there any more discussion before we do the vote? No? Okay. Corey?
Where you aye.
Well, no.
Aye. Bill Wheaton, aye.
Thanks. Richard Boroff,
Richard Boroff, aye.
Marty Crouch,
Marnie Crouch, aye.
and Dan Ham, aye.
Rick, did you vote?
Can't.
He and
Rick and I are recused.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Right.
Okay. So we look forward to Dave coming back as soon as he has some additional renderings or some
Yeah,
answers.
so I think we'd like to be back. We want to move this pretty quickly. So I think our homework is just, regardless of motions, I just want to make sure we're dialing into what we need to dial in, which is this west elevation in this corner, the materiality change, and we're looking at the windows. And I think those are the two really big things that we heard and that we're going to focus on. And I think with that, we're going to plan on coming back to you at your next meeting.
We'll be
Which I
here.
think
That's
it's
fine.
20th.
When do you think you're going to start construction? Ballpark.
This spring.
Okay.
But what we need to do is we need to get this building fully designed so that it can go into the Passivhaus Institute for certification. And we need, our contractor time to bid it out. And so it doesn't feel like it's moving fast, but it's moving fast in the world of some publicly funded work.
Great.
That looks,
Okay.
it looks
Thank
like there's a
you.
lot of thought gone into it already, so. looks good.
Control back to Patrick before you.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Hold on one second. Let me see here.
So Patrick, when's the next meeting?
November
Our
20th.
next meeting is November the 17th.
Okay.
Great.
We'll be here.
So that's about 3 weeks.
Yeah,
We'll be there.
you recall, typically we meet on the first Tuesday of the month, and there's a little event happening on the first Tuesday of November.
I haven't noticed.
Yeah. And then 2 weeks or the week after that had some holiday implications. So we decided to just do it on the 17th.
Okay. If we could get on the agenda, that'd be great. Because I think we'll definitely have this ready to go.
Sure.
I think, I just in terms of setting expectations, I don't think we'll have color palettes picked out by that point, but we'll have the change in materials potentially and just at the corners and be able to talk about that in more detail. Maybe we'll see.
And Dave, do you know when you might hear from DHCD?
Any minute.
Okay.
2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
All right. So can you pass over control back to Patrick?
I think he's got it.
All right, Brian, it's all yours.
I think Patrick, you're still the host. So I think I'm good. All right. Thank you all.
All right, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Aaron.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Dan.
Thanks.
All right. move on to the fun stuff.
That's it.
So Patrick, you sent out a number of emails this week. Some you'd sent out before, some updates from Bill on his matrix for the flexible bylaw that we've been chatting about the last number of meetings. And I think my goal tonight would be I think the language is pretty close overall. And then I think once we finalize this, well, quote unquote, finalize this matrix, I'd like to get it out to, some developers so they can have a look at it and provide comment in the, fairly near future. So ideally we can, at least get something, finalized tonight to do that, to take that next step. So that's what I like to work towards tonight. And, Bill, if you'd like to just take a minute to review your matrix, I think that'd be great.
Sure. Patrick, can I share my screen?
Yes, sir, you have the ability.
So I sensed there was a little bit of confusion. Can everybody see the screen?
I don't see it.
Not yet.
Oh. Hold on. Screen sharing has failed to start. Patrick, I can't share my screen.
Let's see. I have it on the multiple participants can share simultaneously.
All right, let me try one more time. Huh. Okay, hold on one second. How's that?
There we go.
Okay. So I sensed there was a little confusion about whether the density limits that we were proposing were the density that would apply to the entire parcel or just the part of the parcel that was developed. So I produced this matrix looking at both. So you notice that as you go across here, 20%, 40%, 60%, this is set-asides. And there's two numbers. One is what is the overall density allowed on the land if you start with 2 acres and you have a 20% set aside. And then what is the density that results on just that part of the land that is developed? That's what it's going to sort of look like, what the development is going to look like. And so in my part of this matrix, everything is continuous. You can set aside 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. I've just picked 20, 40, and 60 as illustrations. But if the developer wanted to do 55 or 40 because of some features of his land, he could do that. So the way to think about this, let's look at the 40% here, okay? The way to think about it is, in this plan, under my proposal, the developed land representing 60% of the total parcel would be developed at 4.66 units per acre. It's more than twice what it is now, but the overall density would be 2.8 as opposed to 2. Another way to think about it is you've got 40% of the land with no density and 60% of the land with 4.66 density, and the average is 2.8, okay? And likewise, if you set aside 60%, then the developed part of the land gets developed to much higher. That's 8 units per acre. And you got no density on the open land, which is 60%. And overall, that's 3.2. And so, and that's what I'm doing down here on Rick's too. I'm saying Rick has a different formula, but I'm asking in each case, what is the developed density on the piece that's being developed, and what is the overall density? And I'm doing this without getting into the details about what bonuses we're giving for what features. Low-income housing, small housing, energy efficient housing, having the open space be accessible by the public. I think that's the finer details. What I wanted to make sure is that we were all on board with choosing between these matrices and getting the progression correct. So again, the main difference is that once you get to 40%, Rick has there's no bonus of any kind, or you have to have 40% to participate. And then in Rick's thing, you get 2 units per acre, no matter what the underlying density is. Okay. And you might get a little more than 2 units per acre if you meet the objectives of columns C, D, F, and G, but the minimum is you get 2 units per acre. In mine, you would get 2.8, 1.4, or 0.7. You get less of a bonus in a low density area, so that the people that move in and originally bought houses in a really low density area don't all of a sudden find density that's 4 or 5 times what they and their neighbors have now. And then, you work your way up here. We can go to the 60%. In Rick's case, you get 60%, you get an extra unit as you go from 40 to 60. So the bonus doesn't vary with what the underlying zoning is. You get 3 units per acre no matter what. In mine, you get 3.2, 1.6, and 0.8. So clearly we're not adding as much density in a really low dense area like RA as we are able to add in a more dense area like R1A or R1B. I mean, that's the spirit of this matrix as opposed to this matrix. I haven't gotten into any caps. We're not near any caps here. 4, 3, 6. Rick had a cap of 6. I take it the cap was applied to the overall, which is equivalent to saying that the density on the developed portion can be no more than 15, or down here, no more than 10. One of the problems economists have I'm an economist, with formulations like Rick, is you get everything at 40% and nothing at 45 or 50 or 55. You don't get any bonus for giving more land beyond the 40 until you get to 60. So what you're going to find is all the developers will say, well, I'll give 40, but there's no incentive for me if the land is in some ways better suited by giving 45 or 50, because I'm not getting anything for it. I get the bonus for the 40. If I go all the way to 60, I get another bonus, but I don't get anything in between. So in the way my formula works is you would. You'd get something at 30, you get something between these two numbers if you were at 50, and all the way up. So the developer has a lot more flexibility in how much he donates, how much he sets aside. So that's really the two differences. The idea that you have a sort of continuous bonus, depending on how much you set aside, and the idea that the bonus is smaller in areas that are lower density, because we don't want to change their character that much. If you give the same unit bonus 222 or 333, That's a huge bonus to an RA district. And it's only a 50% bonus to an R1A. So I think politically that's going to be a real problem.
So, Bill, question. Corey, after the last meeting, put together a very nice comparison of how your matrix would work. And
I think there was some confusion in that. There's some of his numbers are actually in here, but I think there was some confusion about whether the density bonus applied to the overall or the developed land. I couldn't quite, this is actually accurate. Corey was trying to do exactly this, I think. Corey, do you?
I can tell you what I was doing. Taking what you had said during the meeting, I don't recall if it had been written, but you had stated at the time it was 3.4 multiplier in a R1A. At 60%, you had done a minimum and a maximum, sort of giving the board discretion there. But the 3.4, 60% maximum on a 10-acre build would be to apply to the base density of the total 10 acres. In addition to that, our bylaw has in it that regardless of that statement that I just made about 3.4 times what I could have built on 10 acres, the contiguous land has to be completely set aside and the build can only occur on the remaining. And therefore, take your multiplier for having 10 acres of a development. I can only build on 4 of that. So I have to apply your multiplier as of the entire site and the density as of the set aside, or like the piece that's not set aside.
I mean, that's what I've done here. We're not coming out with quite the same numbers. I'm pretty confident on here. So in a 10-acre R1A, you could build 20 units. And if we set aside 60%, okay, you can actually build 32 units. Okay.
4 acres.
Sorry, this would be, you can build, hold on a second. If it's 10 acres, you could build 20 units. Your overall density here at 60% would be 32, but you'd be putting those 32 on only 4 acres, which gives you a density on that part of the land of 8 units.
Right.
Right. So in some sense, I think it's important to look at this. The developer is going to be thinking about, well, you know, how many extra units do I get? It's 20 as opposed to 32. It was a 10-acre unit. The person driving by the development isn't going to see, you know, an overall density of 3.2 or 32 units. He's going to see a piece of open space and then something next to it, behind it, wherever, that's much more dense. That's 8 units per acre. That's townhouse density almost.
so, Bill, I'm looking at Corey's matrix where he takes the 10-acre parcel at 6.8 units an acre. Is that accurate?
I'm at
In the prior matrix, 3.4 was the max multiplier on 60%. We've changed that now to 3.2. So
I think that might have been an error, or maybe it had a cap on it. This is
Well, nonetheless, even if it's 3.2, you're probably looking at 60 units on a
20-acre site.
on a 6-acre lot, which is
No,
No.
okay.
no, he's saying 3.2 per acre.
Per acre. This is per acre, not units.
Right. 3.2 units per acre. In this case, with the 60% overall, 10-acre parcel, you have 32 units, right? But they're
That
all
can be
built
built
on
on
the
4.
4 acres that are developable.
Yes.
the-
And so if you
hence the-
just look at those 4 acres, those 4 acres have a density of 8.
8 units per acre.
Yes.
on the developable land. Yeah.
So my only concern is this is a very, and this is what I had hoped we would avoid. This is very complex. And even you, Bill, are having a hard time explaining this. And
Well, it's just that I'm happy to eliminate one set of columns. I just want to make sure that people
well,
understand.
here's the challenge is we had a matrix, and we still have a matrix with specific bonuses based on whether it's public access or $100,000 contribution to the open space fund, with a density bonus for each of those. Then you've completely changed that to have incremental bonus densities from 30, 40, 50, 60%. But there's no application of the density bonuses that we had finally come to some agreement on. So we seem to be going in opposite directions in
Well,
terms.
I'm not.
Let me finish.
Sure.
In terms of simplicity, and simplicity is key here. A, for me to understand. B, for the public to understand. And C, for any potential developers to look at this and try and figure out what it is that we're saying to them. So that's my challenge.
I get where you're going, Rick, and I think this is broken down to be relatively straightforward. I think there's probably I don't know if we need to end up in the matrix getting into, the overall versus developed and all that. I think we can make that simpler. I think what we probably need to do is, we can add on a fixed percentage for those other categories, the
Yes.
water
That's
use,
that's what I would.
whatever it is.
That's what I would
5%, 10%.
propose.
And then I think the one thing that I think that's missing maybe is a max per acre, unit count, or a total max per project, something like that we had in senior housing, that I think would, quell some people's fears of, a very large parcel having a lot of units. I think we need to maybe do one, if not both of those.
Well, we can eliminate the second column in each case because
Yeah.
that's the implied impact.
Right.
On the developed land. I just wanted to clarify.
Agreed.
What we were doing, and then we can interpolate between the two depending on the criteria
real quick.
that we have.
Looking at one of the differences between the math you've done here and the one I had was that, and I was tying together our prior conversation the night of and the matrix that I had in front of me. 3.2 is not a multiplier; it's a number of units per acre. Then,
yes,
in replacement of the original 2 acres.
That is what everything here is: units per acre, not a multiplier. Right.
Got it. I think I had heard or understood, anyways, the night of we were talking about as a multiplier.
Yep.
So R1B remains the same. It was a 1 per 1. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward. Again, once you simplify the chart and take off one of the categories, whether it's overall or developed land, whichever one. But I do like that you can get bonuses incrementally, right? You don't have to reach a 40, 60, whatever it is threshold to get another unit or whatever, or another percentage. I like that it can be basically anything. The one thing, I'm concerned about, I went back and looked at senior housing again today and looked at that, density matrix and bonus matrix, and it was much more equally applied. And again, this is something that was able to be passed and used. the base density in each zone, B, R1A, R1B, and RA, were different. It went from, in that order, 4, 3, 2, and 1 per developable acre. Now that used developable acre, which didn't count wetlands mainly, but then it created a maximum at the very end after all the bonuses of density per developable acre. And except for the B district, everything was 4 per acre, 4 units per acre. And so there was some, equality between the zones that I don't know whether that helped get it passed or not. And I don't know exactly what it started at the first time that it didn't get passed. But I think we need to have a more equal distribution of density here than what we do now. And if I was a developer, I would look at this and be like, all right, I'm only looking in the R1A district for something to develop because
That's where the density
why
is.
wouldn't I? Right? I mean, there's less land most likely in that district, but I can get 4 times as many units per acre as I can in the RA. So why am I even looking at the RA? I don't think there's enough density to make it worth the developer's time in the RA in this scenario. Probably R1B as well.
I agree with that statement, and I think to that end, like the usefulness of the whole bylaw kind of gets killed by the matrix not being
Right.
as useful in the higher.
Right. You're picking winners and losers here, and that's not going to go over politically at all, because people in R1A are going, wait a minute, you're really dumping on us a high level of density, and you're picking winners in the RA district saying, oh, well, actually, it won't be much at all. And that's not going to fly either.
Right.
Well,
And in the end, the
in
developer,
percentage terms, it's the same. So you're increasing the density in RA by a factor of 4. You're increasing the density in R1A by a factor of 4.
No, I understand that.
but
I'm not sure Rick does.
B is not, right?
B is a factor of
2.6.
About 2. A little over 2.
it just doesn't work out in 1 acre. It works out in the numbers are what the numbers are.
Yeah,
No, I get it. I just I don't think there's enough there to make it worth a developer's time in the RA or R1B personally. I mean, we can wait to hear from them, but that's the feedback I'm expecting.
But the developer is not going to be looking. I don't think the developer is going to be looking at the developed land column. The architect is. The architect knows what he's going to build when it's 8 units or 2 or 3 units. The developer's money is going to come from, he has to buy this piece of land. He gets a residual off of each unit. Question is, how many units can he put on the land? How you configure them is not as important as the total number of units. So he's actually, his profit is going to come off of the overall column.
Well, yeah, but it's the total number of units.
Right. So you're saying to him, he can build, 70, 80% more units, not quite twice as many units as he could before. Maybe that's not enough.
No, it's not.
But you're also allowing him to cluster. That's an advantage.
Well, that's an advantage to everybody. That's a
I mean, if I was a developer, I'd be looking at senior housing, right? Why wouldn't I? I mean, again, we're going to hit our, at some point hit the max number of units that's allowed, but we're not there yet. And, that's seems to be more lucrative than this.
Yeah, it clearly is. So Marnie, do you understand this matrix?
I do. I think the density of Bill's matrix could increase by adding the other criteria that we've discussed.
Yes. it
So
would.
how that would affect how a developer would look at this, it might be more advantageous.
So I'm wondering,
Yes.
can you,
Well, I
Bill,
could do, you have 4 columns, Rick, in your thing for bonuses. So I could divide up
I have
4
5.
percentages and add them in and sort of say you would have a maximum and a minimum. Everything you see here is the minimum. And then if you met all 4 criteria, you'd have some maximum.
that would be helpful. Because then you'd be melding the two. So in essence, I don't know if you've got my last draft, which was 9.9. Column B is the flexible development density base. So if you started with that base using your matrix, I don't know if that's possible. And
Well,
then
what I would propose is I start with my base and then I look at, you've got 4
5.
columns and you get, for example, in the 40% overall, it goes from 2 to 2.8. That would be the minimum. And if you met all 4 goals,
5.
it would go from 2 to 4 or some other number. We'd have to,
There's 5, Bill.
Well, whatever. I think you need to put a percentage to each one of those.
right.
And that way we can tack it on. And now what percentage that is up for debate, but I think that's the easiest way to do that. And it's up to the board to decide if you meet that criteria, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest thing to do.
Well, then I'll take another pass at it.
Whether it's 10%, 5%, whatever it is for each one of those criteria, then again, I think we
Let me
back
take
to-
another pass at this. We'll get rid of the developed land columns and we'll just deal with the overall density and we'll have a range which scales up depending on how many of the criteria you meet.
And I think I don't know, maybe to keep it simple, to keep the chart simple, maybe it's just verbiage at the bottom that says, look, if you meet the water use is 10%, if you meet the other ones is 10% or 5% or whatever it is, they're cumulative, but there's a maximum, maximum units per acre that you can do. That to me is pretty simple.
Singular or 1 per zone?
What's that?
Is a singular maximum as like Rick's was 50 max, or is it
Well, I think-
R1A, R1B?
I think it's twofold. I think just like senior housing, there was a maximum number of units you could have in any development.
Per acre, yeah.
Not per acre, just maximum number of units, which was 50.
Right.
And I'm not saying we should use that here, but and there was also a maximum number per acre, per developable acre of,
Right.
and that was 4 in that one.
Right.
I'm not arguing for that number, but it was both. And then there was a maximum number total
Townwide,
forever townwide.
150.
I think it was 100,
No, it's 150.
150, whatever. Yeah.
But
Well,
that
let me try
4
and do
is
the first of these, which is the maximum density. So I'll give the range and the maximum and then put a footnote in what the range depends on.
Right. And that's why we kind of like went the affordable housing was a maximum of 4, right? Brian?
Senior housing, you mean?
Yes, senior housing.
Yep, it was 4, except in the B district, which was 6, but everything else was 4.
Right.
What was your question, Corey?
it's basically that. Are we talking about 4 for R1A, 4 for R1B, 4 for RA, or we have a different number for each?
Well, that's the question, right? I'm just rattling off what senior housing was or is.
No, I know, and I'm bringing it up because it seems to be the largest differentiator between Rick and Bill's matrix is that
Yeah, right.
Rick seems to have a straight across, and Bill
Right.
has a
Right.
degrading
To the degree it's
percentage.
possible, and some of this is going to be dictated by the zone and the land available, the maximum density per acre needs to be either the same or uniform in some fashion, because you're going to be picking winners and losers. And people are going to look at the map, the neighborhood, and say, oh, why are you discriminating against me? You're putting a higher level of density in my neighborhood than you are in RA.
Yeah, I mean, one thing,
I'm
one
not
thing,
sure I agree with that, but the voters will.
Oh, I can-
The
I-
voters will tell us.
Yeah, no, that is so, it's so ingrained in everything we've done. I can tell you, because the downtown thinks that it's being put upon, even with Willow Street, any kind of development. People in the RA district, they don't like development. So you've got to have something that shares the process, shares the outcome equally, or as equally as possible, or else it's just going to be a mess.
I agree with you, Rick.
What
because
it-
I can see that if one district doesn't like the way something like this is designed, they're going to, as a unit, vote against it. If it were in town meeting or if it were on a ballot election, and it'd never pass.
Doesn't that same statement go for the design itself in the end? Say this is all passed, it's all uniform, everybody gets a times of 1,000, whatever the density is, Is a developer going to show up in an RA district, say I got a 500 unit apartment building that I just happen to own enough land to build? Your point to the bylaw itself getting shut down, so would that building project, correct? People would be up in arms if they're going to be up in arms, and if it's at the bylaw stage or the build stage, the design approval stage, at some point they're going to get up in arms. What we're trying to do is make a useful bylaw to encourage development of our area.
right. And I think that's why senior housing passed, was some of the maximums that were put on everything, that it quelled some people's fears that, everything we've done has been like, oh, these are going to happen all over town. Like, well, not really. We've put in, mileage between them. We've put in maximums overall. I mean, there's all those things that help quell people's fears. One thing you could do in the RA zone, and I'm favoring the zone a little bit with this, but what if you said, you have to start with 40% open space? That way, you've limited the developer a little bit there, but you have to have that to do anything in that zone. And obviously there's more space to do it in that zone for the most part on those parcels. But that would at least provide a minimum there to start with.
Just having an NA in the 20s, 30s,
Yeah.
that kind of.
And the other thing that would be helpful is, again, as Corey did, Bill, once you've formulated the matrix the way you want, is then run a property like Corey did, 10 acres, just so we can see how it plays out in each of the districts.
Right, well, with numbers like this, it plays out, you just multiply everything by 10.
Right.
Or 20, or 30.
Right.
To get the number of units. This is units per acre. Multiply by acres and you get total number of units.
Right.
Let me take another stab at this with incorporating the. Let me see if I can dial back a little bit the favored nation status of RA here, which seems to bother Brian. And then
Just me. Don't single me out.
No, it bothers me and it bothers Corey as well.
okay, and then
Now that you
Build in a
range.
range for meeting the various goals.
Okay.
I have three weeks to do it for the next meeting.
You know, I'll just make a comment. I think as a practical matter in the RA district, it would be my thinking, and I don't have evidence to back it up, but if there were to be some type of cluster development, it more likely than not would be on parcels of land in excess of 5 acres and probably more like 10 acres. In which case, if you do have the 40% of open space set aside, the development as clustered, if well designed, perhaps would have less an impact on the neighborhood than one might think. And I don't know if anyone would agree with that supposition and how that would play out with respect to Bill's redraft of this matrix.
But that's what we're already allowing. What we're saying is because the cluster would have a little bit of less of an impact because there'd be some public land there, you can actually build more units. That's the way this system works.
Well, I just think what I'm saying is, though, in terms of the public's perception in the RA district, it might not be as overwhelming than in the other districts. And so the density might be able to be increased slightly. I mean, I agree with you that if it gets the RA district, it becomes too dense, then people will react negatively. But, you know, the larger parcels can accommodate more units per acre than the smaller parcels. Again, I think we have to think about caps on this, however.
Oh, yeah. No, I have no issue with caps. I think that's the only way this will happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but you're totally right. Is, you know, again, a well-designed project with that much open space is a start. You know, in some, not every case, in some cases will be, you know, even hidden from view in ways, right? I mean, maybe not from one abutter, but from the vast majority, it may be fairly hidden depending on where it is. So in some cases it won't.
Well, you look at the boulders in Wenham. I mean, that's a lovely development, but you really don't see it from the street.
Right.
And,
right. And, you know, obviously there's, you know, some impact to a few direct abutters there, but you're right. You don't see it from the main road where it has, you know, more impact on more people. And yeah, I can see that, you know, something like that, you know, in a larger setting out in the RA district.
I actually think I mean, we're talking sort of about an emotional response to it. And I think it's a reason why I would agree with what Brian said about like just Xing out like the 20s and 30s on the higher end. And therefore, not only do you get clustering, you get guaranteed land that will not be developed upon held, right? So you're not just like losing all of your RA to this potentiality, this perceived like mechanism that's just going to take away all of what we are preserving. But we're putting aside 40+% land that has been promised to not be developed on in future iterations. And so you have a cluster, you have a gap. You have a cluster, you have a gap, on top of the fact that the cluster may or may not be seen from a main road, may or may not be seen from very many, if any, abutters, that kind of thing.
Right. So how about
I would comment through the special permit process, the board has the ability to work with the developer to site the projects in the most advantageous location every individual respective site happens to possess.
Right. Yeah, no, agreed.
I feel like it's in the goals of our bylaws already to ensure proper siting.
well, the other point I'll make, and this is really critical, and I had some language to this effect in one of the drafts that I circulated, but I eliminated it because further on in the bylaw, and I don't know if anybody's actually read this or gone beyond the matrix, the board does have the discretion to approve or disapprove these any development under this special permit. So this matrix is a guide. It's not a promise. And,
Oh, yeah.
and that's
Oh, yeah.
that's really critical.
Right.
And to thinking about this, it's just a guide. It's a suggestion. You might be able to do this.
Or
You might
it's
not.
also possibly a cap.
Right.
Well,
I mean, the cap
Right?
could be
And the
in
whole
there.
development, which land they set aside, how the units are arranged, that's all going to be managed with site plan review, right?
Right.
Well, I
No,
mean,
special
Special
permit.
permit.
Special.
And it would
No,
also
I-
be managed by what's actually on the land and how difficult it is to build on parts and easy to build on other parts of the large parcel.
No, I completely agree, Marty, and that's a good point that, in the verbiage, it does say that. However, from a political standpoint, most people want their absolute, right? What's possible? What might the board approve? Because some people don't like the planning board, don't trust the planning board. So I think the chart is absolutely critical, because a lot of people will say, look, this is what's possible, right? And that's, again, why I think the maximums are important here, whether it's max per acre or, max total per the town, what have you. But yeah, I mean, that's obviously a point that we'll bring up in time and during the whole public hearing process, and, hopefully eventually a town meeting. But most people will see that chart and what's possible and look at that only.
right. And the other, the sort of, there's a flip side to that, Marty, is it is discretionary. It always has been discretionary. And the caps will be important. And I think if we copy them actually from the senior housing bylaw, we can say, mileage, total townwide, total per acre. Those are clear restrictions. And if we're going to get developers to actually look at this and they know this is a discretionary permit, if they're going to invest tens, not hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring this to the planning board, they need clarity in terms of the guidelines. And there needs to be enough potential density there for them to undertake this. So that's one of the things. I don't want to, go so low that it's like people look at it and go, well, geez, I'm going to a crapshoot. I don't know if I'll actually get this approved. They need some incentive.
Yeah, and I think, some of us have been doing this long enough where it's, you get the public's perception, or well, at least, the few people that actually attend these, ours, and then a developer, and it's somewhere in the middle, right, is the magic number. What's tolerable, but actually what will work, and what, developer would actually use. So, I mean, they're going to shoot high just like anyone would in their shoes, and others are going to shoot low that, are abutters or townspeople or us even. So, I think that's how it worked with senior housing, if I'm not misspeaking, Rick, but because I wasn't there for all of that. But I think that's what happened. Was I think you just worked that matrix and, again, put the caps in, and that's how it got approved.
Yeah, that was I think that's what sort of got it over the top, over the edge was the distance, the total cap town-wide, the total cap per units, and the total cap per project. And so, because people will always assume what potentially could be the worst. Look at it and say, oh, well, it could be X. So
Yeah.
those safeguards will help.
Yeah, and that's been in place for what, 8 or 10 years now, or more?
Probably at least 10 years.
10 or 12, I guess, because I've been here 10 or 11. So, and we've got 2 projects, right, and now maybe 3 at some point coming up. But in 10 or 12 years, people were afraid of these things being all over town, and yeah, we put the cap on, but we've had 2, right? And, they're out in a similar area. They're not that far apart, but, and we've got what, 30, 35 units or whatever it is exactly, between the 2. So, we're not close to the 100 or 150 that the max is. We haven't been close to the 50 per year that the max was. So I think, people's fears don't always come to fruition on things like this. So, that's just another side of things.
I think that's a good point to remember when we're working to get this new bylaw passed, to remind people of what happened in the past.
Yeah. And does it always ring true with every bylaw? No, but I think, and again, that's why these maximums are important for something like this. And you're just not going to get in our town rampant, development projects using this bylaw all over the place. It's just not going to happen.
First of all, you got a problem of just finding enough open space in the districts to be able to do it.
Yeah, right.
And the space has
land costs. Yeah.
Pardon?
Land costs and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
All these, all the sites are getting, trickier and trickier to build on. And,
So Bill, you got some homework to do. Can you get this out like at least a week in advance rather than a day or 2 in advance, so we have time to actually look at it? And
I'll try my best.
Oh, it would be good if you could actually promise us to come forth with something.
I promise it won't be one day before.
It'll be 2 days before.
I'll give you at least a week since we meet on Tuesdays. I'll give it to you at least the weekend before.
Okay.
And I think our next step is to try and look at that senior bylaw and try and integrate the positive aspects of the matrix used in that bylaw with the matrix that we're trying to formulate now.
Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing, Barney.
That's exactly where the matrix that I started with came from. That's an absolute duplicate of that matrix. The numbers are different, but the format and types of incentives and the density bonus ideas came directly from that.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Moving on. What else do we have, Patrick? I know we have minutes.
Yep, we have some minutes, and I have a request of the board as well.
Yeah, you want to do that first, and then we'll do minutes.
Sure. From time to time, I have mentioned to the board that on one of my hats that I wear is to be a member of the Town Hall Building Committee. And on that committee, the chairman has asked that members who are connected to town boards and groups that utilize Town Hall from time to time. And I guess this was primarily prior to the COVID pandemic, but the request was to all town boards and committees and groups to support the reconstruction, rebuilding of Town Hall. As many of you are aware, the building is, it's got issues. Virtually every system in it is antiquated. It is a non-accessible building on 2 of the 3 floors. It doesn't have plumbing on the 3rd floor. Our electrical systems, well, year before last, we had 8 power outages. We have a number of other issues just outside of that in terms of utilizing it. As I know each of the board members who have spent time in the memorial room can attest, it can be a very difficult space to utilize. So for a couple of years now, the Town Hall Building Committee plus the design team, which has been funded by the CPA funds, have basically redesigned the building. I've sent informational package out to board members, to give you some of the basic information. This project is going for a referendum or a selection for a referendum vote at town meeting. I believe that referendum would be in December. But in any event, I'm respectfully requesting that the letter that I sent to the planning board members last week be authorized to provide to that committee and to town meeting.
Anybody have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. This is a $9 million project. And as I mentioned to Patrick, none of the board has seen any of the details, costs, design, the impact on the tax rate, on our bonding capability. There's just so many questions that haven't been answered. We haven't even had a chance to ask them. And to ask the planning board to endorse carte blanche a $9 million expenditure without having seen some basic details, I think is a bit much.
I mean, in some ways I agree. Is there a way that we could endorse it but not endorse it? Like say we approved the site plan. We approved generally the design that has been presented, and understand the need, right? But not go so far as to say, the planning board is endorsing spending $9 million on it.
I think that's perfectly legitimate to couch it the way that the board sees fit.
I mean, do people agree with that? Again,
yeah, I sort of agree too. We could say something like, should the town vote to spend the money, the planning board finds the plans to be good, but that doesn't commit us to spending the $9 million.
No, I don't think we all have an individual vote on this. Right. And I don't think as a board we need to endorse spending the money. So yeah, I would just propose, again, that we've approved the plans, under our general purview of what we needed to, for site plan review. It met our criteria for that. It will improve the overall use of the building, the overall use of the site, provide accessibility, what have you, make it sound really good, but not endorse spending $9 million. Right?
Well, I'm going to be the skunk at the garden party here. Is we haven't seen the final plan. We haven't seen the final design. I know virtually nothing about this, and I've been trying for weeks to get some details on this project, and they're not available. And I know Patrick suggested, well, you should go to some of the building committee meetings. Well, if the building committee wants our endorsement of this, they should come to us and make a presentation so that we understand what it is that they're proposing, what it looks like, what it's going to cost, how it's going to impact the tax rate. I just feel like writing a letter and say, we support this project.
Well, that's not what we're doing. That's what I'm
Well-
trying to get. That's what I'm trying to get out of.
We're supporting the concept of the
We're-
project,
we're-
not the final project.
Well,
We're supporting it in a sense of our purview only, in that it was approved under site plan review based on the design that we were given. And we understand that, you know, the building needs improvement, needs accessibility, what have you. And under our purview, which was only site plan review, we feel that it meets that criteria, period. Nothing about 9 million.
Yeah, I would, Brian's statement is
Because we've already
beautifully
it's already been approved.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's fine if you want to say the planning board has approved the site plan review as presented. I mean, it doesn't really
Yeah,
say
yeah.
much, but if that's
No,
what you want-
it doesn't. But and again, I think we all understand that there's a need for this. That, you know, the accessibility is important. You know, the elevator, all that stuff, right? And that based on the design that we approved, you know, we feel that it meets the needs that have been presented to us, because all this stuff was talked about with us somewhat, maybe not in full detail, but, you know, I don't think we need to get into the nitty gritty of whose office is where and all that stuff. But, you know, in general, it was presented to us.
I will tell the board as well that the Town Hall Building Committee's website, webpage, has more information than probably any other single board group or committee. There's plans, there's cost estimates, there's even charts there that I asked the developers or the builders to provide us of comparable projects and how this project compares to it price-wise.
Can I ask a bit more basic question? I've only been in town hall once, and it was to be sworn in, and I wasn't allowed in certain staircases because of directional use. What if it doesn't go through? We don't approve, not us, but the town doesn't approve 9 million. How long is the usefulness of that building to the town? And what is the prognosis beyond that? Is it build a new one and we have this historic site this historic asset that remains in need of it? Or do we just live it out for 20 more years and vote on 9 million in 4?
You know, that's definitely an answer bigger than me. I can tell you that the committee kicked that ball around quite a bit at the onset of this. You know, we don't have another building. We don't have another site. We don't have another, you know, opportunity that could accommodate day-to-day governmental functions the way that this building does. This building hasn't been maintained the way that it likely should have over the last many decades. And, you know, there again too, as you heard from Dave Traeger, requirements, any energy code kinds of things, code requirements have advanced steadily every single year since the time this building has been built, and very little has been done to it. We had a cupola blow off in a storm a couple of years ago. You know, I have fallen downstairs here.
No.
They haven't done me very good. We've had at least 5 people on this second floor of Town Hall who've either had hip, knee, or back operations, who still had to deal with 2 floors worth of stairs. This is, you know, in a less kind and gentler world, you know, we wouldn't have to deal with ADA kinds of things, but we do. Yeah, I'm amazed, frankly, that we haven't had grievances pulled on this building. I'm amazed that we haven't had the Architectural Access Board for the state of Massachusetts to, levy fines against this building. Because I've seen them do it to other
Yeah,
municipal
right.
buildings elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's, questioning the need for a fair amount of this, right? And a fair amount of it is accessibility. Obviously, there's, some luxuries, a larger meeting room and things like that. But, and unfortunately, this couldn't be a worse time to be asking for $9 million.
No question.
But, right, it is what it is. So, yeah. So, yeah.
So in answer to Corey's question, if you don't vote it, I think what probably happens is the can gets kicked down the road for a few more years until COVID goes away, until the school budget is solved because 200 more kids or 300 or 400 more kids move into town or whatever, and it'll come back again. And
yeah, the cost will be 12 million then, and
that's right.
that's just how it is, right? But, and again, I'm not advocating either way, but so can we, can you redraft the letter to be a little bit more in line with what I was saying? I think if everybody's okay with that. And then I know you need it, you're going to want it before town meeting on the 14th.
Right.
I mean, how can we, do we need to vote on it, or we just need to all agree on it? And then we can all, draft it, pass it around, everybody okay it. And I mean, I guess we can vote on the intent tonight that, you'll redraft it, and, we can all take a final look at it, and then I can
The
sign
final look would be editing, and it's okay to discuss editing problems outside of an open meeting. So the concept that you're offering is legal. We vote tonight to okay the letter and the concept of building it, and then the actual editing of the letter can be done at a later date without having a formal meeting. Just people give their comments to Patrick, and Patrick can incorporate them or incorporate them into the final draft of the letter.
Or is everyone okay with that?
Yes, so let me just make clear. So we say in this letter that the plans presented to us, we found they were completely suitable in terms of site plan review, our site plan review purview.
I don't think we should go that specific. I think we should have the letter say simply that we agree that the present status of the town hall is inadequate in terms of codes and usage, and that the town hall needs to be updated. I think we need to keep it pretty simple. And
you kind of go into where I didn't want to go.
Yeah, I think that I don't think you want to go there.
I would agree.
Bill.
I mean, you're close, but it's, as soon as you say, we feel that it's inadequate, it's kind of de facto
Subjective.
Approved. Yeah, I want to stay to the facts of what we've done. That, again, I don't mind inserting the part about, it's not up to code, anywhere close to up to code, and under the planning board's purview for site plan review, we approved plans dated whatever, or even just, the design that's being approved, for town meeting, or presented town meeting, or substantially, and keep it at that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you're right. Right. I just didn't want to get into the whole
need,
what's
want,
there now, isn't
right.
Yeah. It's substandard per building codes and ADA and all that stuff. And, based on that, we've approved under site plan review.
We approved the project.
We approved the plans. that
Yeah.
were
We
presented.
approved the plan.
Yep.
That's it. We didn't approve the project.
We approved the
plan.
design. We
We
approved the
approved the design. That's good. We approved the design and the plans.
Or
Yes.
just say we approve the concept.
No, again,
No,
I want to say we approved the plans,
Okay,
the design,
fine.
right?
Yeah, okay.
okay, Patrick, I think those are the operative words.
I
I
think
see Rick and Marnie nodding. Corey, are you okay with a letter that says essentially we
Yeah, totally. I
approve the plans? We approve the plans under our site plan review.
in lieu of them abstaining for lack of knowledge, I'm completely fine with this whole thing.
You good with that, Dan?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. You good, Patrick?
You betcha.
All right. All right. Has everybody reviewed minutes from our last meeting? Any comments? Marnie?
I misplaced my minutes. I did go through them. I had just a general comment. There was discussion of Bill Wheaton's matrix and then a reference to the first proposal. And I think that it might be clearer to indicate that that proposal preceded Bill Wheaton's proposal and that they're really just two matrices under consideration. And then in the minutes, there was a reference to the bylaw when we were actually discussing the matrix, which would be incorporated in the bylaw. And those were the only two comments that I had. Just a clarification that there are two matrices that were being discussed.
I think the problem came because I sent a revision to Patrick, which he sent around. So there was a earlier and then a revision, which had an error corrected in it. But they were
right. It was unclear to me whether the reference was to Rick Mitchell's matrix or your matrix. So that was the question that I had.
Yeah, you're right, Bill. I think we should just clarify it was to Bill's initial matrix that was then amended.
That was then revised.
Okay. Anything else?
That was it.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
I second the motion.
So can you just state your names, please?
Oh,
So Bill, can you just,
Bill Wheaton makes a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
thank you.
Marnie Crouch seconds the motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, take a vote by roll call. Rick Mitchell,
Rick Mitchell, aye.
Marnie,
Marnie Crouch, aye.
Bill,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Corey,
Ray Beaulieu, aye.
Richard,
Richard Boroff, aye.
Dan,
Dan Ham, abstain.
Brian Stein, aye. Thank you.